My brother guilt-tripped me into sending him $25,000 over the years. Then I overheard him bragging about it at a family barbecue. So I did something no one in my family expected. And I didn't look back. You ever have one of those moments where everything you thought you knew about someone just shatters? It was a hot 4th of July, sweat clinging to the back of my neck, the scent of grilled burgers and sticky sweet barbecue sauce hanging in the air like some nostalgic perfume. I was 2 beers in, taking a breather near the side porch when I overheard my younger brother, laughing, drunk, joking to our cousins about how easy it was to manipulate me. Just bring up the leg thing, and boom, he's handing me money like an ATM with guilt issues. I stood frozen. I didn't even breathe. My hand, gripping a paper plate full of ribs I no longer had an appetite for, began to shake. And in that exact moment, it all clicked. The late-night calls, the panicked texts, the "bro, I'm in trouble" messages that always came right before rent was due or a bill needed paying. All of it was fake. A performance. But we're not there yet. Let me take you back to where this all really started, when I was just a kid and my life got tethered to a guilt I never asked for. I was 5, Ryan was barely 2. We were playing in the living room while my mom tried to wrangle laundry, dinner, and a ringing landline all at once. I remember chasing a balloon around the room, laughing. Ryan toddled after me, giggling in that gummy, toddler way. And then he tripped, slammed his tiny leg against the edge of the coffee table. The scream he let out is still burned into my memory. There was chaos. Ambulances. A fracture, they said. A clean break, but a break nonetheless. Even though it was an accident, and even though my mom later admitted she should have been watching us more closely, the narrative quickly shifted. My dad was furious, more with me than anything. My grandmother said I was too wild, too careless. My aunts whispered about how boys are rough and destructive. Nobody outright said it, but I knew what they all thought. I broke Ryan's leg. I caused all this. And so, the guilt began. Fast forward 2 decades and change. I'm 32 now, with a steady job, a modest place of my own, no kids, and a predictable routine. Ryan? Not so much. He's 29, married, 2 kids, and a history of bouncing between jobs like a ping-pong ball. He's tried a bunch of different gigs, sales, food service, rideshare apps, even a failed attempt at reselling sneakers online. The problem was never opportunity. It was Ryan himself. Impulsive, bad with money, always between paychecks. Still, every time my phone lit up with his name, I answered. Every time he said, "Bro, I hate to ask, but," I opened my wallet. It started small. A couple $100 here and there to help with unexpected bills. A gas bill in the dead of winter. A car repair so he could get to work. Then it got bigger. Rent for a month. Then another. Then half the rent when his wife picked up a part-time job. Medical bills for the kids. A payment to stop a car from getting repossessed. I didn't think twice. I couldn't. In my head, I owed him. Maybe not legally. Maybe not even morally. But emotionally? Yeah, I was the reason he had that limp. That scar. That story he told about being the kid with the broken leg. Over the years, I probably sent money at least twice a month. Sometimes more during the holidays or if one of the kids had a birthday. I always told myself it was temporary. That once Ryan got back on his feet, he'd stop needing help. That he'd look at his family, his kids, and get serious about stability. Spoiler, he never did. And still, I didn't stop. I cut back on vacations. I skipped buying a new laptop. I stopped dating seriously. Every dollar I sent felt like penance, like a tiny plaster over a decades-old wound I couldn't stop picking at. No one in the family knew. He knew I was helping now and then, but not the extent, not the total. And Ryan? He never once said thank you. Not directly, not publicly. I've always hated big family gatherings. The kind where everyone smiles a little too hard and pretends like nothing's wrong, where old stories are recycled like cheap paper plates and people drink just enough to get loose, but not enough to say what they actually mean. 4th of July was no different. I showed up with a cooler full of drinks and a tray of ribs I'd marinated the night before. My contribution, like always. Something to fill the silence. Something to justify the invitation. It was at my uncle's place, big backyard, pool half filled with kids, lawn chairs scattered like a game of musical seating. My parents were there. So were my cousins, a couple of my aunts, and a few unfamiliar faces I figured were in-laws or neighbors. Ryan had arrived late with his wife and kids. He looked tired, but then again, he always did. Still, he made the rounds like a pro, smiling, laughing, telling everyone how busy life's been. I kept my distance for most of the afternoon, sticking to the shade and chatting with whoever wandered over. It was fine, comfortable, even for a while. Then I decided to grab some air away from the crowd. That's when I heard it. Ryan was around the side of the house with a group of cousins, leaning on the porch railing, a red cup in one hand. I could hear his voice before I even saw him, louder than usual, the kind of loud that comes from a mix of alcohol and self-satisfaction. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I froze the second I caught a piece of the conversation. His name, followed by mine, and then laughter. He was joking about me, saying that getting help from me was easy. All he had to do was mention the leg thing, and I'd start throwing money at him like some walking guilt machine. He said he didn't even need to lie anymore, just had to sound panicked enough, and I'd wire money within the hour. They laughed. Not all of them, but enough. One of them asked if he ever planned to pay me back, and he waved it off like it was a stupid question. Said something about how I'd always feel responsible, so why not take advantage of it? I didn't stick around for the rest. I backed away, unnoticed, and walked straight to my car. Just quiet. Focused. I didn't slam the doors. I didn't text anyone. I didn't say goodbye. I just loaded the tray of ribs and the cooler back into the trunk and drove off, the sound of their laughter still echoing in my head like some off-key anthem. It's a surreal kind of pain when you realize someone's been using your kindness like a punchline. I couldn't remember the last time Ryan had reached out just to talk. Not about money. Not about problems. Just talk. There had been a few texts, sure. Updates about the kids. A meme here and there. But the conversations always circled back to some crisis, some bill, some urgent situation that required money. Suddenly, all of it felt like theater. And I was the audience, dutifully clapping at every act. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled up my full bank history. Not just the recent stuff, but everything. Every payment labeled with some vague note. For the kids, utilities, car help. It took hours, but I cataloged everything. I needed to see it all. To make it real. Over $25,000. That number hit me like a truck. More than a year's worth of rent. More than a new car. More than the down payment on a house in a decent part of town. Gone. Not stolen, but handed over freely. Every bit of it given with the belief that I was helping someone I loved. Someone who, deep down, I thought would do the same for me if the roles were reversed. And he laughed about it. Bragged about it. Used it to impress people. That was what did me in. Not the money. Not even the lies. But the pride in the manipulation. The way he wore my guilt like a badge. A convenient excuse to bleed me dry without ever having to feel bad about it. And still, part of me wanted to explain it away. To believe that maybe he was just drunk. That maybe he didn't mean it. That maybe he regretted what he said. But another part, the part of me that had been tired for years, knew better. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. A system. One that only worked because I let it. I stayed quiet for a few days. Ignored texts from the family group chat. I just let the silence sit. I started wondering what else had been said at that barbecue. What else I might have missed by walking away. Had this been going on longer than I thought? Was I the punchline in more stories than I realized? I thought about confronting him privately. Just sending him the spreadsheet with a message that said, "Here's what you took." But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wouldn't fix anything. Ryan would either deny it or turn it into another sob story. He'd find a way to make himself the victim. And the rest of the family would probably still treat him like the lovable underdog who just needed another chance. But what if they saw what I'd done? What if they had to read it, line by line, and reckon with it? That idea started to take root. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. I was done protecting people who never protected me. So I pulled up the family group chat. It took me almost an hour to write the message. I wanted it to be factual, clean, unemotional. But I also wanted it to carry weight. I started with a brief explanation, how I'd overheard Ryan at the party, and how his comments revealed a long pattern of manipulation. I didn't go into everything he said, just enough to make it clear that it wasn't a misunderstanding. Then I attached the spreadsheet. In the message, I listed out some of the bigger contributions I'd made. Rent for 3 separate months. The time I paid off his car repair, so he wouldn't lose his job. School fees for his daughter's art program. The mattress. The groceries. The utility bills. And then I told them what I now understood, that it wasn't kindness on Ryan's end. It was manipulation. Calculated, deliberate, and sustained for years. I ended the message simply, I won't be doing this anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone who thinks this is just family stuff. I gave what I could. I gave more than I should have. And I'm done now. Then I hit send. The silence afterward was strange. A few red receipts popped up right away. Then nothing. Not for a while. I left the chat muted and went for a walk, needing to move, needing to breathe. When I got back home and checked my phone again, the group had exploded. Some people were shocked. One of my aunts said she had no idea I'd been helping Ryan that much and was sick to her stomach thinking about what he'd done. A cousin chimed in to say they always suspected Ryan took advantage of people, but didn't realize it had gone this far. But then came the other messages. A few relatives said I shouldn't have shared something so private. That it was family business, not group chat material. That if I had a problem with Ryan, I should have handled it one-on-one. One even said I was trying to humiliate him. That I was kicking a man while he was down. That one stung, but not enough to shake me. Ryan didn't respond at first. Not in the group chat. Not privately. But I could see the read receipt next to his name. He'd seen everything. The next day, he texted me once, just a single message asking why I was trying to ruin his life. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked him. I blocked his number, his wife's number, his email. I removed him from my payment apps. I even called my bank to make sure there were no recurring transfers or links that could sneak money out. I was done. Completely. For the first time in years, there were no backup plans. No emergency fund with someone else's name on it. No guilt lingering in the corners of my mind. Just silence. And strangely, it felt like peace. The silence that followed felt unnatural at first. My phone, which had always buzzed with some kind of low-level crisis or request, now sat still. The quiet was almost eerie. But then something shifted. Slowly, gradually, peace started seeping into the edges of my life. I started sleeping better. Not because I felt triumphant, but because I didn't feel on call anymore. There was no invisible alarm in the back of my mind waiting to go off with the next emergency. No more budgeting with a mental asterisk next to every spare dollar, just in case Ryan needs it. I went to the grocery store and bought whatever I wanted without mentally calculating how much I could afford to spend, just in case. And for the first time in a long time, I realized how much of my identity had been wrapped around the act of helping someone else. I wasn't just Ryan's older brother. I had unknowingly cast myself in the role of caretaker, fixer, ATM, and emotional buffer. And stepping out of that role didn't just give me my time back, it gave me myself back. Of course, the rest of the family didn't take it as gracefully. After the group chat message, everything got weird. Lines were drawn, conversations became awkward. Some people supported me, saying it was long overdue and that I had every right to stop. Others acted like I'd committed some unspeakable crime by airing dirty laundry in public. I didn't argue. I didn't justify anything. If someone wanted to minimize what happened, that was on them. I wasn't going to relive the betrayal just to convince people that it mattered. One of my cousins, someone I'd been relatively close to growing up, messaged me to say she was disappointed in how I handled the situation. She said family issues should stay in the family and that I had embarrassed everyone. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer felt the need to defend my boundaries. The truth was out. What they did with it was up to them. Ryan, for his part, stayed quiet. At least for a little while. Then came the indirect attempts. A text from my dad, casually asking how I was doing, clearly fishing. A vague comment from my aunt during a family Zoom call, wondering aloud if I talked to Ryan lately. I said no, because I knew how that script would go. Ryan would say he was sorry. He'd say he was drunk. He didn't mean it. He was just venting. He didn't know I was there. He'd throw in something about stress or being overwhelmed, and maybe even pretend he'd learned a lesson. But it wouldn't be an apology. It would be damage control. The thing about cutting someone off is that you always wonder how bad the fallout will be. Will they adjust? Figure things out? Or will everything unravel? In Ryan's case, it unraveled fast and loudly. At first, I only saw glimpses of it from a distance. Muted posts on social media. Whispered updates through family. I wasn't looking for it, but word has a way of finding you when people are watching someone fall apart and waiting to see if you'll blink. Within the first month, Ryan's rent check bounced. His landlord, apparently not the most patient man, issued a warning. A second missed payment came shortly after, and the eviction notice followed close behind. The stability I'd been quietly maintaining in the background evaporated almost instantly. Their power was shut off for a few days. Then the internet. His wife took to Facebook with vague, angry posts talking about toxic family members and people who abandon you the moment things get tough. She never named names, but it was obvious. The subtweeting was aimed straight at me. Some family members tried to guilt me. Said Ryan's kids were the real victims. That I could at least step in just for them. But I didn't. I'd already paid for birthday parties, field trips, school clothes, doctor visits, things no one even knew I covered. And now that I was done, suddenly I was heartless? I didn't respond. I didn't even defend myself. I just watched it play out from a distance like someone reading the last chapter of a book they'd already finished. Ryan tried reaching out through other people. First, it was our dad, who called and left a voicemail saying Ryan was struggling and needed someone to lean on. I didn't call back. Then my aunt sent a long email about forgiveness and second chances. I marked it as read and moved on. Eventually, Ryan himself broke the silence. He didn't text me directly, he knew he couldn't. So he wrote a letter, handwritten, folded into a torn envelope. The letter was a mess of half-hearted apologies and subtle guilt trips. He said he didn't realize how much I'd been doing, that he was just overwhelmed, that things had been hard for a long time, and he didn't know how to ask for help in a way that didn't make him feel small. Then he said something that stuck with me. He wrote that he never thought I'd actually stop, that I'd always be there. That line told me everything. It wasn't about regret. It was about entitlement. He hadn't counted on losing the free ride. He hadn't counted on me walking away for good. He didn't see the help I gave as generosity, he saw it as a given, as something he was owed. And now that it was gone, the cracks in his life were showing. His wife picked up a job cleaning offices at night. Ryan started doing odd jobs, yard work, hauling junk, whatever paid cash fast. The stability I'd helped prop up was gone, and without it, they were just barely scraping by. His credit score tanked. Bills piled up. One of the kids had to drop out of extracurriculars. The other got sick, and they had to borrow money from their church for medication. In the end, I heard it all from a mutual friend, Nate. He said Ryan looked like a different person now. Thinner, quieter. Tired so much that even sleeping couldn't fix it. He also told me Ryan had finally admitted to what he'd said at the barbecue. Not out of guilt, but because enough people had called him out. He didn't deny it. He just shrugged and said he was drunk. Said I'd probably forgive him eventually. But I won't. Not because I hate him. Not because I want revenge. But because forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, and it sure as hell doesn't mean returning to the way things were. What no one talks about when you stop being the fixer in the family is how freeing it is to finally let go of the narrative. I wasn't the savior. I wasn't the glue. I wasn't responsible for someone else's poor decisions or lack of effort. And I sure as hell wasn't obligated to keep bleeding for a brother who used guilt as currency. I started putting the money I used to send him into a separate savings account. It's nothing flashy, just a small, quiet account labeled for me. I use it for things that bring me peace. A weekend getaway. A new pair of running shoes. Guitar lessons. I even booked a short trip to a cabin in the mountains, just me in silence and air that didn't smell like responsibility. I still think about his kids sometimes. That's the part that stings. They didn't choose any of this. They're just trying to grow up in a house that's now cracking under the weight of poor choices and burnt bridges. I hope, truly, that they grow up stronger than their circumstances. But I won't be the one who fixes that for them. I've learned a lot since that barbecue. About boundaries. About guilt. About how easily love can be used as leverage when you let people define your role for you. But more than anything, I've learned this. Helping someone isn't the same as saving them. And when help becomes expected, demanded, even, it stops being kindness. It becomes currency, control, a leash disguised as love. I've spent years paying off a debt that never actually existed. And I'm done. I'll help people who need it. But never again will I help someone who expects it. Not at the cost of my peace. Not at the cost of myself. Never again.